Tried to be a voice for the voiceless, and I tried to bridge gaps.
To be qualified for all of these hats that you wear, you really had to have some serious lived experience to be able to help others fight in this war.
I made the fatal decision to go along with an armed robbery that resulted in a store clerk being murdered, and myself and 4 other teens been sentenced to life plus 15 years incarceration.
I lived in probably one of the worst neighborhoods in Toledo, Ohio. We sat in the center between 2 rival gangs. So the neighborhood sat between the Bloods and the Crips.
Right.
Every day my mission was to get to the other side of the street. It was hilarious, but
it was like intense FOMO.
Yes. I was a one-night stand baby. For me, when I first learned that, it was embarrassing. But as I got older and I learned more about who I was, I learned the power behind that. But when I finally did make it, it took me almost 20 years to make it back. Bagging up just a little bit, when I was about 11 or 12 years old, I had this older cousin. And he was responsible for taking my aunt to the doctor, to the grocery store, things like that. He began touching on me. And touching on me turned into some oral acts. And then the oral acts became the full-fledged physical act. And I was sworn to secrecy. And even though I knew it was wrong, I think I had grown so numb to it over the years, I blocked it out. It just became a normal thing. So I kept that secret all those years until I couldn't keep it no more because I became pregnant at 15.
But I remember going into P.L.R thinking that, I'm going to not just survive, but I'm going to thrive in this environment. I had no idea how, I had no idea why I even gained that level of conviction. It was a saving grace for me. And what I quickly learned is that most of the men that are in that environment don't know their fathers. Many, although the mother may have been present, didn't really know their mother. Me coming out of a 2-parent household and having experienced what it was like to have engaged parents prior to, I realized I had something that a lot of the guys around me didn't. And I became kind of this go-to person. And I quickly realized also that many of the men that were at Telfair State Prison, older men, had served maybe 20, 30 years and better. And I think for me, coming in so young, one of the youngest one at prison, I guess I represented a kind of a breath of fresh air for them, kind of a connection to the outside world. However, I was also gifted with the ability to listen, to listen and internalize what a person is saying, and when I'm able to kind of give them or share my perspective with them.
1, I was afraid. 2, I was embarrassed. I learned that my mom was an addict. I learned that my grandma had catered to my mom for so many years. She had enabled her for so many years. Every time I heard about my mom growing up, she was either getting out of jail or going into jail. And all I really wanted was to get to know her. So when I became a mother, a part of me also wanted to know about my mother.
You'll be surprised at the impact it's making on the men that are around you. And it was at that moment that I became more intentional. And what I realized from there is that I had been doing as much for myself as I had for them. Because being able to engage them and to hear their life stories, which was 20 times worse than mine, I was able to deal with my situation by helping them and helping others through their situations. And that's the way I did about the next 17 years of my life.
Wow, in prison. So you were basically doing peer support in prison.
Yes, ma'am.
Before peer support was even a thing.
Right.
My granny told me years ago my picker was broken. I could not pick a man correctly to save my life. So when I got to the phase where I knew it was time for me to get it together, I began to pray about it. I told God that I would allow him to send me the man that he had for me, and that I would patiently wait. That I didn't want him to be like any man I'd ever known, mainly not a man that had been to the feds. Um, but I also wanted him to be a man of God.
And it wasn't that they are monsters, but they had to become this unfeeling thing in order to not be overwhelmed by so much.
They kind of gave me a pass. The charge was dropped from aggravated assault with a vehicle to reckless conduct. And I got 12 months of probation. But those 12 months of probation soon turned into 16 years of me in and out of county jails and institutions.
Wow. So the probation didn't help.
No.
It didn't.
Not at all. No. Now, in those 16 years, it went from abusive relationships to, because I was looking for a void. The relationship with my then daughter's father, who he took on my son as he is, and so I say their dad. That ended when he went to the feds. I had another son. He's 17 now. So he was 4, she was 8, and Miguel was 12. And that's the ages they were when I lost them. And I didn't necessarily lose them, but I had lost myself.
Right.
So I knew that I had to place them somewhere before I lost them.
Right.
I guess 2 years after losing them, I realized I something got to change, but it didn't happen that easily.
Mm-hmm.
I had started going to jail more. I had lost pretty much everything at that point. My children, my home, my hair, my mind, my weight.
Right.
So for me, I kind of processed all these experiences through the lens of faith. When I met certain challenges that were overwhelming for the average person, I got back centered in myself. By this time I had chosen Islam or being Muslim as my way of life, and praying 5 times a day gave me something to return to 5 times throughout that day. And I think that I wasn't overwhelmed as much as the men around me by the oppressive circumstance conditions, because they were there, and me coming out and doing this well is an exception. It's not the rule. But I think I was able to navigate that because I constantly had a core to return to.
Right. You did end up getting out, and that story was a little crazy as well, right?
Yeah, it was. That was important, but the biggest benefit of that is that ultimately the warden there petitioned the parole board on my behalf for my release. While I gained a lot of hope from that, it didn't materialize. But some years later, probably about 10 years later, a second warden petitioned the parole board. And shortly after that, at about my 18th year, this one particular warden that had a lot of political connection within the system, he had been in the system 32 years, I think, and had worked his way into a position of influence. I would find this out later.
I was angry. It was a lot that was going on with the family during that time. A lot that I forget so much of, that I don't. In telling this part of my story, I leave so much of it out simply because so much of it was a blur. And to pray, really pray. And I just let it alone. Yeah, I knew I had a lot of work to do on myself.
When I met her, it became something for me to focus on. Her first of all, her request to help her with her son it was just, of course I took that on. Young men, particularly young black men, or something that I hold dear to heart, because I know that so many of us, and I say us because I can remember my early years and what led to my situation, so many of us are misunderstood.
I needed to find somebody to help me understand him and help him understand me. And I had found out about P.L.R. And I went in there one day because the previous director, her and I had a relationship throughout the years. And so I went in there to talk to her, and I stumbled upon P.L.R.'s group. And who's leading the group? Shane. And I'm in there, and I'm just hanging on to every word he was saying. But it wasn't, I didn't immediately get the eyes for him. I was in there looking for help. And and I just shared with him what it was and what I was going through and the help that I needed, and he agreed to help.
Yeah, and for me, it was just kind of the perfect storm. Unbeknownst to her, I was going through pretty rough transition myself. Was at the tail end of a bad situation. I just, when she asked if I could help her with that, just like, of course, and during the process of doing this, I found someone that I could trust and kind of began to open the window into my life because I was this kind of public figure, and so I was very reserved about what I had going on within the four walls of my own home. And she became that first person, even before my dad, that I can talk to about that transition. And one of the things that struck me with it that she was so non-judgmental, so not opinionated, and over the months that followed, that turned to years, she listened without judgment.
So, so you guys together collaborate, and so you have each of your own. So you have Mother to Mother, and you're working also with that. And do you also work with Modern Pathways, or do you guys keep things pretty separate?
So we try to give them collaborating events just to show them that recovery, you can't, a lot of people think you can't coexist the males with the females, but we try to give them the healthy balance to say, hey, you don't have to jump on this man just because it's a man in recovery, but we do things together. We take them to the lake. We, have the holiday gatherings. But as far as me with Modern Pathway, before I opened Mother to Mother, I think they had been in operation almost a year, and a lot of the guys, they needed that softer figure, that womanly figure that they could begin to open up to. One of the guys in general that is, for me, I love him so much. When I was working at P.L.R, right when Modern Pathways got opened up, he was the tough case. Like he didn't want to participate in group. He didn't want to talk one-on-one, but he always found himself in my office talking. He didn't want to talk to me, but he was always in my office talking. And I used to tell him, listen, you need to go to Modern Pathways. You're in this situation. You out here messed up. You need to go. You need to be one of the first ones there. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. He went. And because of it today, he is thriving, doing well. So I would say in the earlier beginning phases, it was just him and I. When putting the furniture together and cleaning the apartment out, the first unit, it was just him and I. So I would like to say that I was definitely in the beginning processes of Modern Pathways, but am I hands on with it now? No, they still come to me, Miss T, and they'll still talk to me about stuff, but not as much as they did in the beginning.
And for my part, I think I was the opposite. The men needed a softer part because I can be firm, but the women needed, for Mother to Mother, need a male that can give them honest advice and opinion. They're not worried about any ulterior motives.
Exactly. That is so important with women, having like a big brother fatherly role that is safe.
Yes,
that is so huge. So I think it's so cool that you guys are able to collaborate, and it's like it's almost like family recovery, being able to see the mother sister figure, the father brother figure, and then you guys, just being the example of this is what recovery looks like, this is what trusting God looks like, this is what walking out in faith looks like, and taking your, lived experience and turning your negatives into positives, and not just turning it into positive for yourself, but multiplying that into a harvest for the whole world.
Yes, ma'am. And that's our hope. That's our for us both. The gift of our hurts and pain is a passion and the empathy for others, and that's one of the many things that we share in common.
Not only that, one of the biggest things for me that was proof that God sent this man to me was, I guess, probably about a year or so of our relationship. I shared with him a prayer that I had prayed, many years ago, that if God just saved my life, I would use the rest of my life in service. He had prayed the same prayer.
Wow.
He had literally prayed the same prayer. And so I remember when we first got together, I told him, I said, we are going to be an amazing team. Like, we going to do this. My actual words were, I see us on the front page of the Forbes magazine. And he laughed, just like he's laughing now. I saw it, I meant it, and I stand on it. But what I meant was, I knew that God brought us together to do this work. And it was just no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Right. And that is something that people don't really understand about marriage, right? There's a couple reasons why God gave us the wonderful gift of marriage. One is to sanctify us, which sometimes hurts. Sure. Right? But also it's to use for God's glory, so and for service, right? And so you guys are definitely like the example of what that looks like. You're proof of that. So what about like deciding to be together like as a family, both in recovery? There's a lot to that. Right. And I know because I am married to this wonderful man. We're both in recovery, and man, it can be really challenging sometimes.
Yeah, it is. For me, I'm Muslim, as I stated earlier. So the first thing for me was to sanctify our marriage. So we entered into a covenant according to Islamic principles. And for me, that was just like that just had to have been done. Once that was established, I'm used to the struggle. My previous marriage consisted of quite a few struggles, but often one-sided. But I thank God for the experience. But with her, P.L.R is willing to struggle as well. And so the marriage consists of, as you say, a lot of dynamics. Not very easy. But when you have someone that's willing to fight just as hard and has just as much vested as you do, it sanctify even the struggles, and it has been a growing process, and I pray that it continue to be a growth process throughout the duration of our lives. But because we both have similar background, kind of this parallel existence in prisons of our own, we get it, we understand it, and we continue to push forward.
Right.
For me, I have this stubbornness, this mindset that says I lost a lot through my years of my addiction and just family and stuff. So I took from him, he's such like give me some of these hats. Like he wears so many. I wanted that as well. I wanted to match his energy. I didn't want to come into the relationship and just, I don't want to ride his wave. I want to ride with him on the wave. So I wanted to match his energy. The only problem is because I have to realize I got a 14-month-old and a whole home. And so sometimes my doings and my goings will interfere with, it's time to come home and cook. Mm-hmm. It's time to take your cape off and stop being superwoman to the world and be superwoman at home. Yeah. And that for me is something I've had to learn, and that's for me is where I'm working on me at. Because I thought that, maybe while I was out being superwoman at home, we could hire a maid or something, and it just doesn't work like that.
Someday.
No. I don't ever want a maid. I don't ever want a maid.
That's a joke.
Okay.
But either way, it's learning. It's learning to balance. Is one of the hardest part for me in the relationship is being able to be woman enough to say, I'm wrong. We can't do that. Women don't do that in real life, do they? Yeah, we have to. And I'm learning that, and that was my biggest part of the growth, and developing this relationship to being whole and healthy is to be willing to grow through the pains of it. But it's all worth it. it's all worth it just to know that this is a God sin. So we have to honor it, and we have to do God's will, and we have to do some things outside of our will in order so God's will can be done. And I have to constantly remind myself and be reminded, and but the fact that I'm willing to.
And that goes both ways. You know, I'm such a, I see a goal, I set steps, let's get her done. But I have to realize that that level of discipline is God's gift to me. She has her own gift. And so I have to be mindful about imposing my will or imposing my gift on her and say, hey, walk this way. You know, the thing I remind myself is that if everyone is like you, then there's no gift in what you can do. And so I take pride in the fact that we're different. She's gifted her own way. I'm more disciplined, more structured in terms of my thought and executing plans, but that's made me what I am. But she is more gifted in her empathy, her ability to connect on the emotional level, her ability to process hard things like what she's saying and fight against herself and come with the, you know what, okay, I'm sorry, you know, and that's a gift. So it's both ways, you know. I have to allow her to walk in her gift, I walk in mine, while we agree to meet midway.
I just want to end with having everybody know about Mother to Mother, so where it is and what you provide for services. Just one more time.
So Mother Recovery Center is located at 2 Professional Court, Elberton, Georgia. We're literally right across the street from the hospital. And we provide, I like to say, a wraparound of support services, because we support multiple pathways. We medical assistant treatment, the spiritual side, Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous. I like to say that, you know, we give them that clinical piece that is needed, but for me, the hard part, the power part, is the experience, just the raw, honest experience that they need to hear, and then to just be the evidence that it's possible. So I just pour into them all the love that I can.
And if someone is interested in coming to Mother or donating to Mother, how would they do that?
On Facebook at Mothertomother Recovery Center.
Okay.
And we are on Twitter and Instagram.
Okay.
And the contact number is 706-351-8952. And we do Cashapp. Mother to Mother Recovery Center. It's Mother to Mother is our Cashapp tag.
Awesome. And Shane, for you, P.L.R. and Modern Pathways.
Yes, ma'am. So P.L.R. is a 501c3 nonprofit located in Athens. It's our RCO, Recovery Community Organization. We offer recovery support services to individuals suffering with substance use, mental health, and homelessness. Modern Pathways, again, is a 12-month treatment program for men. We have 3 units here in Athens, and we do work with individual intake fees. And I point that out because the co-director, Edmund Patterson, and myself, we realized that sometimes recovery can be cost inhibitive. And so we wanted to create an organization that did not make that price point so high or so challenging that individuals say, you know what, I can't afford recovery. And my contact number is 706-340-4098, and we do both jointly have a nonprofit called Lifeinrecovery, and the information for that can be provided as well upon contact.
Okay. Awesome. Fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much for letting us come and invade your house.
Yes, ma'am.
And set
Glad
up.
to have you.
Thank you so much for your powerful stories, and we will see you guys next time on Recovery Inspired Hope.
Thank you.